darkness enveloped me, as black as the impenetrable shadows that fill a room when the candles are suddenly extinguished. Although my eyes offered little more than tormenting visions of imaginary horrors that rose from the dark, my ears became acutely attuned to the sounds surrounding me. The persistent lap of water on the barnacle-laden wooden bow of our small fishing skiff, and the creak of the wooden planks as we rocked on the dark, open ocean. I was only aware of my Uncle Fabian due to his muttering to himself as he mended a net or something of that nature toward the stern of the boat, from which I would have made no distinguishing from any other direction if it wasn't for the sound that separated it from the surrounding abyss of darkness. Darkness did not bother him. His eyes had grown weak in his latter years, but he still could see well enough with his fingers, which never lacked work. On the other hand, I did not care for darkness, but in this instance, I knew that I must accept it despite the unease gnawing at my gut. I perched uncomfortably on an old, splintered plank, my eyes scanning the endless expanse of the night ahead. A handful of stars twinkled down at us, their distant light struggling to break through the thick veil of clouds that shrouded the sky. With a sigh, I leaned down, feeling the rough texture of the wood beneath me as I searched for a line to bait for Uncle Fabian. My fingers brushed against the small, weathered box of matches nestled against my foot. I picked it up and held it close to my face. I felt a yearning to rip the box open, strike a match, and watch the tiny flame leap to life, flickering and dancing as if it were a lone friend finding its way against the dark gloom around us. Nonetheless, I quickly dismissed the idea. I was no fool. I would not trade my fragile sense of comfort for the dangers that hid in the shadows. Safety, after all, was too precious to gamble away. I was not superstitious, but being a cautious person, I was not one to act irrationally either. Yes, I had heard the legends. Everyone in the village knew them. Those who lit a light upon the dark ocean would face the shark and meet their demise. Whether it was a story, legend, myth, or custom, it had haunted our people for as long as anyone could remember. We could not go hungry though, and needed to catch a fish if we were to make a living. "Do you have the line ready yet, boy?" My uncle's hoarse whisper cut through my thoughts. No, not yet, sorry. I trailed off. "Keep your voice down," he hissed. I could sense by his tone that he was uneasy. "Right, sorry," I whispered. I placed the small box of matches beside me on the old splintered plank on which I sat. Bending over again, I tried to concentrate, my fingers trembling as I fumbled to find the line that lay on the rough wooden planks near my feet. My hand found it, and I lifted it. "Hurry, boy. I don't want to be out here any longer than we have to," Uncle Fabian muttered. "Here it is," I said, leaning backward to keep my balance. The boat rocked slightly under the weight of my movement as I extended the line toward the direction of his voice. "Careful, don't pitch us overboard," he gasped, his voice rising an octave as he groped through the blackness to take the line from my grasp. I must admit, the sensation of swaying in a small boat, surrounded by sheer darkness, could easily drive a man mad with terror if he let his mind wander. I desperately tried to keep my thoughts tethered, but the oppressive silence of the night was haunting. I urged myself to focus on the task at hand and not succumb to the gnawing fear in my stomach. "Have you got anything yet?" I whispered. "No, nothing," he replied. The darkness began to seep deeper into my thoughts, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. "Uncle, maybe we should return empty-handed," I suggested hesitantly. "Just a little longer," he mumbled. A quiet breeze sifted through the blackness, rocking our boat gently. It felt as though the void itself was pressing down on me, its gaze unrelenting. I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched by something unseen. "Uncle, I began, but my words caught in my throat as our boat jolted violently from below. The vibrations sent through the frail wood body of the boat riveted my being to the plank on which I sat. As the vibration subsided, I was filled with a dread so palpable that my insides felt as if they were twisted upon each other. Boom. Another jolt to our boat, this time larger than the last one. "Uncle," I screeched, panic rising in my chest as our boat pitched and rocked. "Quiet," he shrieked. I fumbled for the matchbox that lay beside me as the boat slowed its rocking. I tore it open and grabbed a match. Uncle Fabian heard the sound of the box and hissed from the dark. "Don't do it, boy. You strike that, and you'll bring it here. You'll bring them here." His words froze the match in my hand. The air felt thick, and every sound, the creak of the skiff, the lap of the waves, seemed amplified as if the ocean itself was waiting. I felt the small match between my fingers. The sudden silence that had come over the water was even worse than the jolt from below. There was a tension in the air, thick and ominous. "Don't do anything, just be silent, ignore it," my uncle hissed. I sat frozen on the plank. An eerie silence crept around me. Only my ragged breathing could be heard against the creak of the planks and the waves sloshing on the thin layer of wood that separated us from the dark depths. I grasped the match tightly in my hand. What if we were wrong, I wondered. Just then, the stillness was shattered as the dark waters surrounding us began to swirl unnaturally, building into a dreadful chaos. My heart raced as our small skiff began to rock and turn in the pitch-black looming darkness. "Uncle," I shouted through the growing noise, "we must light the match." "No," he screeched through the darkness, "it will draw them." I clung to our small skiff through the dark as the churning became violent, holding the match tightly in my fingers. "They're already here," I yelled to be heard through the deafening roar that surrounded us, writhing and pressing in, swallowing us whole. A deep, resonant hum could be heard through the shrieking of the black water as the chasms of the deep yawned open for our small, frail skiff, which tossed feverishly in the fathomless dark. I heard my uncle's incoherent scream as he was flung into the mouth of the roaring dark abyss. I made my choice as I held onto the skiff, the match tightly in hand while being thrown into the yawning darkness as the thick, suffocating depths closed in around me, blotting me out in inky darkness. Light blazed from the horizon, illuminating a sandy beach. The tattered remains of a boat bobbed back and forth in the salty water, which sloshed lazily against the shore, wetting the sand and driving small birds away to safety. Two men dragged the broken remnants of the boat onto the beach, leaving trails of wet sand behind them. The older man ran his hand across the salty, damp planks, feeling the soft ridges of the wood beneath his rough, weathered fingers. His deep blue eyes scanned the ocean, now lit by the late evening sun, which made the water sparkle invitingly. "Another victim of the shark?" the young man asked. The old man said nothing. his gaze fixed on that horizon. "They must have lit a light," the young man sighed, glancing at the few broken boards that remained of the boat. "No." The old man's sharp response startled him. "They did not light a light," he said, his voice low and thoughtful as his eyes stayed on the blazing orange horizon. The young man hesitated, studying the old man silently. The elder's grey hair whisked gently in the breeze, his skin tanned and weathered like leather from a life lived in the salt. Scars marked his legs and arms, their stories untold. Few in the village truly knew him. "I must go tell the village," the young man said, breaking the silence. The old man said nothing as the younger man left, his footprints trailing in the cool sand. As the sun began to slip below the horizon, painting the beach in hues of amber and red, the old man lingered by the remains of the boat, staring into the last light of the sun. Finally, he broke his gaze and turned to the splintered boards before him. He knew the fate of these men all too well. In the village, their loss would be dismissed as a failure to appease the shark, a punishment for lighting a light upon the dark water. But he knew this was not the truth. For years he had tried to warn the villagers. Night after night boats ventured out, but some never returned. Each time he begged them to listen, only to be dismissed. "Go home, old fool," they would say. "We will not violate our customs." His warnings fell on deaf ears, and now his voice was tired, his protest silenced by years of rejection. The old man looked back at the horizon. The sun had now dipped fully below the water, leaving its last orange glow to fade into darkness. He reached into his pocket and retrieved a small object, holding it up before his face. It was a burnt, shriveled match, brittle to the touch, a remnant of a fire lit many years ago. He turned it over in his fingers, studying every detail as memories flooded his mind. The match had been his silent witness to the truth, a truth no one wanted to hear. Lost in thought, he stood motionless as the last traces of sunlight faded. Darkness cloaked the beach, the waves now lapping softly in the cool night air. He turned his gaze further down the shore to a group of villagers launching a boat into the water. As they pushed it out to sea, they snuffed out their lights, shrouding themselves in the shadows. The old man grimaced, his heart heavy as he watched them vanish into the black void of the ocean. The villagers clung to their faith in the darkness, never realizing it was the darkness that swallowed them whole.